Okay, welcome to another episode of the Endurance Matters podcast. I have Eli Hemming, professional trail runner, in the studio today. Eli, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on the show. Super excited. It's good to see you after all this time.
It's been quite some time. I mean, we never really were like super close or anything, but you bump into people in the triathlon space. So for those that are coming to this podcast maybe from triathlon or don't know Eli is a former professional triathlete. Now he's a professional trail runner, killing it on the trail running scene. And so we're going to talk quite a lot today about triathlon and trail running and sort of like where you're at now. But I start off the podcast with like a hard-hitting icebreaker question. The question I have for you today is, would it be easier to run 100 miles or do 10 consecutive Olympic distance triathlons back to back?
Ooh, I mean, right now with what I'm doing, I'd rather run 100 miles. I have not swam since I quit triathlon. So I think that itself would kill me.
Yeah.
I think right now the easiest thing for me would be 100 miles. I think the easiest thing on my body might be 10 Olympic distance, but I think I'd go for the 100 miles.
Yeah, it's still 100K of running if you did 10 consecutive Olympic distance triathlons, which just sounds like a lot regardless. I think getting back in the water would definitely, each time after doing the 10K would be a challenge. So anyways, very interesting answer. I alluded to it before, but you got your start in triathlon. Why don't we rewind a little bit, and why don't you tell me about how you got into triathlon in the first place?
Yeah, so my mom was actually a triathlete in college. She's been a swim coach longer than I've been alive. So I popped out, started swimming right away. And then by the time I was 5, 6, me and my siblings were like, hey, we'd like to do triathlons too. That's a pretty sick sport. And she's like, okay, well, each of you go find one friend and I will start a triathlon team that's associated with the swim team. So at 7 years old, my mom started a triathlon team. So I was doing triathlon from the age of 7, which the only place in the world that you can do that is probably Colorado.
Yeah, for sure.
So it was a very privileged thing for me to start doing triathlon at the age of 7. But then I kind of continued doing that all the way up until when I turned professional at the age of 19, 20.
Okay. And did you always have the plan of going pro? Was that sort of your North Star to go pro and get to the Olympics and all that?
It's kind of funny. So I never really had that Olympic dream moment of yes, that is my overwhelming goal. This is what I want to do. Honestly, I was more in it for the lifestyle of it. I love training. I love all that goes along with that. And I love the lifestyle. Racing is what you do to get the lifestyle.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's it was something that I just enjoyed so much, and it was kind of just the next logical step to start doing more and more important races, trying to go for the Olympics. That was kind of the next logical step, but it was never yes, that's exactly what I want to do with my life. It was I went to college in Denver and started running there because after the 16 to 19 age group, the junior age group, there's kind of this there's a little bit more now, but there was this break of, I'm not really sure what to do with my time. Do I go to college for swimming, for running? Do I try to keep doing triathlon? I don't know. So I was like, okay, well, I can get college paid for by running, so I'm going to go run. And I made it a year and a half. I'm like, screw this. I'm going back to triathlon. I can figure something else out. I started doing school online. And so that's kind of how I got back into triathlon, and that's when I started taking it really, really seriously.
Sure. If your motivation was really coming from an intrinsic place and you shift yourself back into triathlon and now there's all this pressure to perform and now the Olympic dream becomes a little bit more of a thing, is that a detraction from what you wanted it to be? Did it turn into something else and evolve, or were you able to maintain that kind of love for the sport?
I went and ebbed and flowed with that. So I would get really into training for a little bit, all of a sudden, I'm doing every single workout. You can talk to my former coach. It was I'd have these little stints that I was the perfect athlete, and then I would go absolutely rogue. And it'd be okay, I need some time to myself, and I'm gonna go ride for however many hours in the mountains. It was still fitness related, and it was still doing well for triathlon. I was still racing well, but sometimes I just needed to like get away and be like, okay, I need to go ride my bike for like 8 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that was maybe some foreshadowing to what you ultimately got into with the trail running, just kind of being out there for quite a long time?
Yeah, I do. I think it was a lot of that was how I got my adventure fix.
Sure.
And so this is my new adventure fix that I found.
Yep. Reflecting on your time in triathlon, because it probably had to be, over 10 years, 10, 15 years when you look back on it, what were the high moments, if you can pick maybe one or two, and what were the low moments?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the high moments were obviously just kind of the grind and training. Like I did love that so much. Low moments, obviously, one of my biggest goals was getting to the Tokyo Olympics, and I was kind of one of those next guys out. As me and Matt McElroy were right on the edge there, and I was in line. So the way of qualifying spots for the Olympics is pretty convoluted, but it was basically you have to have 3 guys ranked in this certain bit. And so I was that 3rd ranked guy, and I got a stress fracture in my foot, like at the perfectly worst time. And so it was like, okay, well, if I go race, my foot's going to be like absolutely messed up, but the US will have a 3rd spot, or I cannot race and I can continue my life in sport.
Sure. Yeah. There's no right answer there.
Right. Yeah. No.
So what did you end up doing?
I did not end up racing.
Yeah.
I kind of chose a little bit of selfishness there of like, I want to continue doing sport, whatever that is, for a certain amount of time, or as long as I can, really, like until my body gives out on me, I'm going to be going.
Yeah.
So it was kind of one of those I know if I get that spot, if I get that extra spot for the US, they're not going to give it to me because I'm going to be broken.
Yeah.
So it would be different if it was like, okay, if you can guarantee that I have that spot, I'll do it. Yeah. Maybe.
Sure.
But at that, I think there's sometimes that you have to take care of the body.
Yeah.
Instead of actually like just keep pushing.
Yeah. And I think, look, I wouldn't perceive that as a selfish thing at all. Like your health comes first. And if you're going to go there and break your foot in half and not be able to run, for a year or 2 years, that's something that you really love and enjoy. So especially if it's not something where you can sign a contract and say, hey, I'll go break my foot, but I want to ensure I get that Olympic start spot. I don't think they were doing something like that at the time.
No, they weren't.
So definitely very interesting. I know that you trained with Ian. Was that your main coach during your triathlon career?
Yeah. So my mom was my triathlon coach all the way from 7 all the way up until when I was 19 years old. And then pretty much I told her like, yeah, I want to try to go like professional. I want to do this. I want to do that. And she's like, okay, well, I'm not your boss here anymore. You need to go find somebody with a little bit more expertise. Like, I'm done with you. Go find somebody that you can train with. Go find a group. And so there was a program that was starting, that USAT was trying to start, that was down in Tucson, that they kind of gathered up all these young professional like ITU athletes. And then they found Ian, and they brought us all in. The program itself kind of imploded within like 3 months. Like it just didn't quite work. There's something a little bit wrong, but I did really enjoy Ian as a coach. So when that finished, I walked up to him and was like, okay, well, this program's not continuing, but I would like to continue with you.
Sure.
So yeah, then all through that next 5 years, I was with him.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, we're talking about Ian O'Brien. He coached Taylor Knibb to World Championships. He actually coached my wife to her second at Ironman 70.3 World Championship in 2021. So very experienced coach. Do you feel like during that time you had Ian and yourself together had extracted like as much as you had in triathlon, or do you feel like there was maybe more left?
I definitely think there was a lot more left. I think, like, it's easy to say this because, like, it never actually came to fruition. But, like, I do think the best I ever was at triathlon was right before COVID hit.
Yeah, sure.
Like, it's easy to say that, right? Like, so many people are like, oh, yeah, like, right before COVID. But that was kind of the fittest I've ever been. Was we had this training camp in South Africa. And I don't regret, like, not being able to race Abu Dhabi because I find myself where I am now, and I'm super happy with where I am now. And I think if I would have gone to Abu Dhabi and raced, it was like 2 weeks before, that's when they shut it down. They're like, okay, COVID's happening. You better get back to the US. You might be stuck in South Africa forever.
Yeah, sure.
I think if that race would have happened, it might have prolonged everything. So pretty happy that it didn't go that way. But at the same time, it was that was definitely the best I was in triathlon.
Sure. Yeah. Interesting timing there for sure. And then when does the idea of retirement come into your head? I mean, you're such a young guy. At that point, you're, mid-20s. When do you think to yourself, I'm done with triathlon?
It was kind of, like I said before, the racing is kind of not really my number one goal, my number one thing. And I kind of felt like the last year that I was racing, like I had some super high highs. Like I won a World Cup. Like that was the first time I ever did that. But then I also had like the worst races of my life, and everything seemed to be going wrong that year. And it was just like beat my head against a wall. And so it was kind of, I got to that point where I was like, okay, well, I'm kind of done traveling the world every single year of like, I want to like, I think the first year that I raced triathlon, I was home for like 2 weeks. And I'm definitely more of a homebody than that. Like I like having a home base. I like being near my family. And so being like actually away was a pretty tough thing for me. So kind of what I thought was, well, I kind of have a couple options here. Like if I kind of go to long course, go to 7.3 Ironman stuff, I can live in Boulder. I can be near my family. And then randomly, it was just kind of my wife now she was going to just hop in a random trail race. And she's like, just hop in with me. Like, it'll be fun. Like, do whatever. And we kind of had the question there, like, this is like so much fun. Everybody's so nice. Like, it's such a good time. Could we just be like trail running vagabonds? And like fully joking at the time. And then kind of the year of COVID continued. I didn't race at all. And like, okay, well, now what do we do? And that's kind of just where that little spark happened. And so I did another race and I was like, okay, this is actually so much fun.
Sure.
And so I figured I didn't know at the time that I was going to get paid for it at all. It was just kind of one of those things like maybe take racing a little bit less seriously and go have fun. And now I'm having fun racing, but I'm actually getting paid well for it. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think at that point, what are you thinking career-wise? Because you have this chapter end. Are you thinking, okay, I'm going to go back to school, I'm going to find a job, or were you just kind of head first into the trail running?
It was, for quite a long time, I've had a little bit of a coaching side business. And I kind of thought, okay, well, if I want to go into another sport, I want to go kind of full in. So doing a job that I can make enough money, like definitely not making very much money because coaching is not a great way to make money.
Sure, yeah.
But it was something that I could do anywhere.
Yeah.
And I can sit on my butt and then the rest of the time is dedicated to running. So it was kind of follow coaching and then see what I can do in running. And then now it's kind of evolved into what it is now.
Yeah. Are you still keeping up with the coaching business?
Yeah. We got quite a few athletes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting thing because I have a very similar story, I guess, where I feel like the coaching is always something that sort of supplements everything that you're doing, right? Like it's fun, it's rewarding. You can pass along the knowledge that you've, gathered along your entire career, but also it has that steady income component with, professional sports that is not steady. It's not as steady as maybe you need it to be to pay for a mortgage or a car payment or whatever. So right. Yeah, it's cool to hear that. Sponsor of today's episode, Precision Fuel and Hydration. These guys have been an amazing partner for the show, and it's really a product that I use every single day in my training to help me go faster, feel better. So in today's day and age, we all know high carb is sort of the thing. And so previously I've spoken about how much I like the chews, and I'm still munching on those pretty much every single day in training, but I've really been getting into the PF90 gels. That's been a really big value add for me to have 3 gels in one. And I feel like sometimes I'll just take that entire gel all at once or go half and half. It just allows me to get a little bit more carbohydrate and sort of just bump everything up and feel a little bit better in training. So if you want to try that for yourself, head on over to pfnh.com and use code BigMetz2025 for 15% off. I want to hear about the first trail race that you did.
Okay.
So was that 2020 or 2021?
That would be 2021.
Okay, so what was that and how did it go?
Yeah, okay. So it was a little race in Buena Vista named the Spirit Challenge, I think it was. And it was just a rink dink. No one's there. It was just me and Tabor at the front. I think I got first. Tabor's brother got second, and I I think Tabor might have gotten third or fourth.
Nice.
Like it was, no one was there, but like the environment was so amazing. Actually, there was the people that were putting it on were professional trail runners.
Cool.
And so I got to talk to them a little bit. And so that was a little bit of the excitement there.
Yep. And was there, I guess, shifting from triathlon, at that point you'd been doing it since you were a kid. You're probably pretty experienced and seen most of what you can see in triathlon. Going back to trail running, did it make you feel like a rookie again, or did you feel like you picked it up?
Oh, no, I was such a rookie. There is a completely different skill set. Like, I think I was coming at it from a very good place aerobically. Like, I think triathletes are some of the fittest people in the world. But when it comes to like downhill running and skills that come along with trail running, it's a completely different thing. So I threw myself in kind of head over heels and was like, all right, let's see what it goes, see how it happens. And I was making do with a lot of fitness and very little skill.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I definitely want to, that's a good pivot point here to talk about the training for trail running. Cause those that listen to the podcast, I ask a lot of my guests detailed questions about their training. So I'm excited to dive into what your training looks like now and maybe what it looked like when you first started trail running. So can you walk me through like what a typical week of training would look like for you now?
For me right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so a little context. I'm getting ready for 100K in early February. So right now, living down in Boulder, trying to kind of harden the legs, it's a net downhill 100K. So it's kind of one of those races that just absolutely beats the living heck out of your legs. And it's decently quick. I think the average pace for like the course record is about like 7:20, 7:30. So it's still like fast running.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's like 7.5 hours of running.
Yeah, crazy.
Right. So right now, pretty much I'm running about 120 to 130 miles a week. With that, I do about 1 to 2 track workouts a week. I think it's super important to keep quick, keep fast, make sure that 7:30 pace feels easy.
Sure.
And then kind of on the weekends, I've been throwing my legs down some big hills in Boulder because definitely up in the mountains where Tabor and I live is not conducive to that right now. So I've been working up bigger, long runs, kind of back-to-back days on the weekends, and then just a couple track workouts during the week, but mostly just accumulating time spent running.
Sure. And how much of that running is done on the road versus on the trail or the dirt roads even here in Boulder?
Most of it's done on trail, ideally. We just got that snowstorm, so a little bit less trail this week. But I'd say at least 70% trail.
And how long are you going? Maybe mileage isn't a good question. Maybe time in terms of your longest run of the week, or maybe the longest run that you'll do in preparation for this 100K. What would that look like?
Yeah. So my longest run was 4 hours, and I got in 30 miles of that. But I did 2 of those back-to-back days. So I did 30 miles and 30 miles. So I did 4 hours and 4 hours. But really, I think getting much over a 30-mile run is pretty hard on the system, that it's hard to recover afterwards. So what I'm going for is something that's long enough to create that stress, but short enough that I'm not wrecked for a week.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a coach right now?
No, it's personal coaching. Well, but Tabor is my coach. My wife is definitely my sounding board of, okay, am I about to do something stupid? She's like, yes, you are. Here, let's do this instead.
Sure, yeah. That sounding board is incredibly important. And again, we've spoken about it on the podcast because I've explored self-coaching quite a bit in triathlon the last couple of years, and I failed pretty miserably at it. And I've had guests on who self-coach and are incredibly successful. So what do you think are the important components of self-coaching to make it work? I
think the biggest thing is being honest with yourself, is keeping track of what you're doing, keeping track of what you should be doing. Because it's easy to go to, what do I like doing?
Sure.
It's not about what you like doing. It's what you need to be doing.
Yeah.
So my biggest thing is like, if I was just doing it by myself, I'd probably be running more volume, but less intensity. So my wife is here like, hey, no, we need to be doing a little bit of intensity here. You have to stay fast.
Sure.
Like that was kind of what I came in with to trail running, is I was one of the faster runners. And so if I let that slip, I'm losing my advantage.
Yeah.
So if I stay fast and then I get the skills up to where everybody else's skills are, I should win the race.
Sure.
But really, I think the biggest thing about self-coaching is just being honest with yourself and being honest with your training and what you need. And honesty is hard though.
Yeah, it definitely is, because I think you gravitate towards, like you said, what you like and maybe what you're good at, and maybe there's justification in terms of, oh, I want to capitalize upon my strengths, so let me do a bunch of stuff I'm really good at. And you pad your ego in training, and then you go to the race and you're not meeting the demands of competition because you've left a blind spot there. That's very, very interesting. One thing I'm curious to hear about is, are you training with other people, or are you just doing mostly everything by yourself?
So usually I'm training mostly by myself. Easy runs are all linked up with my wife Tabor, but that's purely out of we train up in a little rinky-dink town in Colorado. So we have one other runner in the county that will come run with us every once in a while, but he lives 40 minutes away. So most of the time it's training just with Tabor, which obviously different speeds when the going gets tough. So all intervals, all workouts will be done by myself. But then now that I'm down in Boulder, it's actually a trail running hotspot. So I've tried to be a social butterfly and getting out with as many people as I can.
Yeah, for sure. Why did you guys decide to settle in Kremling up in the mountains there versus maybe just, having a full permanent location here in Boulder?
Yeah. So Tabor is a 5th generation rancher. So we, during the summer, it's actually like probably one of the best places in the world.
Yeah, sure.
But like during the winter, it's really rough. But with her, we moved up into her family's ranch. So technically, cowboy over here.
Nice. You have the wrong hat on, dude.
I do have on the wrong. It wouldn't fit underneath the headphones.
Yeah. We need to get like an Adidas branded one with like a bunch of little Adidas logos. That'd be sick.
That'd be sweet. No, so like with her family being up there, it was always something that like she talked to me before, like we really got serious of like, hey, like I'm moving back up to the mountains, and if you wanna be with me, you're gonna be moving up to the mountains. And like it just so happened to be like it's such an amazing place, and like I love living there, except for when it hits negative 30 degrees.
Yeah.
Sure. But it was just kind of one of those things. Like it was a move for family. The summer training's absolutely amazing, and it's just kind of one of those things you deal with in the winter.
Yeah. And fifth generation, did you say?
Yeah,
fifth generation rancher. Like, what does that mean? And are you a rancher now?
Technically, I'm a rancher now.
Like, what are your responsibilities? What are your responsibilities and her responsibilities as ranchers now?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, right now we're doing nothing. Right.
Sure.
We living in Boulder. This is kind of the low end, the quiet season of the cows. We have quite a few cows living on the ranch, and that's we're just beef cows. So we raise happy cows. They're super happy their whole life, and then we send them off and get a paycheck at the end of the year. Cool. But it's really we're just doing kind of things to keep the ranch going. Tabor's dad is the ranch manager, but it is a lot of work. I wouldn't say we have necessarily like this is absolutely your job. We're always out there helping, doing whatever, moving the cows to different pastures, doing whatever, building barns, kind of, it goes to all sorts of different things.
And how are you managing that in addition to running 120 miles a week? Because you would think, that training would take out most of your energy and time.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than trying to chase some cows through some sagebrush, because we don't move cows on horseback. Horses are very expensive and very time consuming. And if you don't ride them, they get mean. It's kind of just this whole thing. So we do it on 4-wheelers, but we live in sagebrush land. So sometimes the 4-wheelers can't do it. And instead of having all these dogs, Tabor's dad yells at me like, "Hey, get around them."
So you got to run and go get them?
I have to run around and I have to go get the cows out of the sagebrush.
Do you throw the GPS on and make it a real session?
I should at this point. Yeah.
Why not? Mileage is mileage.
Yeah, no. But doing that after a hard track workout or something is one of the most exhausting things I've ever done.
Yeah, I can only imagine. All right, I want to circle back here to some of the training specific things. I'm curious if you are still incorporating, you mentioned you don't swim anymore. Are you still incorporating riding as part of your training routine?
A little bit less so. I am officially a fair weather cyclist. If I can't go out in shorts, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I am absolutely not swimming anymore. But that's also kind of where we live. There's 0 pools. There are some bodies of open water that I'll hop into, but I'm not going to be swimming loops around it. So I will, I spend a little bit of time cross training on the bike. But right now I've kind of been playing with more running, less riding. I've kind of found that my body does surprisingly well off of high volume running. And right now I'm really putting that to the test. I'm kind of playing with it, see what happens. I'll tell you for February 9th.
Yeah. What's the race February 9th so people can tune in?
Black Canyon 100K.
Okay, cool. And then what about strength training?
Yes, I am trying to get back into it. As every runner always says, I work with Chris Lee, and he makes something that's manageable for me because he knows like I am so against any strength. Like for the first little while in trail running, I'm like, okay, well, strength is not my issue here. Like this isn't my limiting factor by any means. So I'm going to put my cards elsewhere. Of like I'm going to put my energy over here. And now I finally started realizing like, wow, yeah, I've first off lost a lot of muscle mass on the body, upper body, or like I've started getting a little weaker. So now it's finally time. I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get back into strength training, just like a couple times a week, a couple of mobility sessions a week. But I try not to put too much time into that, and I'd rather put more time into running. Sure.
And what are you doing to stay healthy and absorb all this running?
I am very fortunate being pretty durable, knock on wood.
Yeah, that's great.
But kind of, it's just those things of keeping track of mobility, trying not to chase too many cows in the sagebrush after a workout, trying to organize that with Tabor's dad of, let's do it Wednesday instead of Tuesday.
Sure. Yeah. For sure.
A lot of it's just scheduling so that I can make sure, okay, after a big workout, I'm going to sit on the couch and coach instead of go work out and do something with like labor.
Sure. Yeah. So you've spoken a little bit about the actual content of the training. I'm curious to hear from your perspective, how much of the training is like flow and spirit and connection to the trail versus maybe what you were doing in triathlon where it's very data-driven, power meter, heart rate. You said you're doing track workouts, so there has got to be an element of specificity, but where do you sort of find yourself?
Yeah, I was always the guy to find myself on the adventure side of that wave in triathlon. I was always the guy that was like, oh, I forgot my watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I ran for who knows how long.
Sure.
It was a good run though.
Yeah.
Had a great time. So no, I think for pure performance, it's something that a lot of trail runners have to get more into the middle of that. I don't know if there's a perfect spot for any or for everyone, but there is. I think you do need to be doing a lot of some data-driven stuff. You can't just be laissez-faire out in the mountains if you want to be at peak performance on trails.
That sounds right. Walk me through a little bit of your training nutrition. Let's start with the nutrition that supplements the training. So maybe your day-to-day diet, and then also touch on maybe a little bit about how you're fueling. If you're going to do 2 30-mile runs back to back, what does that fueling look like?
Yeah. So really day-to-day nutrition is kind of just, I call it the seafood diet. I see food and I eat it.
Sounds like a good diet.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of one of those things like I'm usually in a deficit and I need to get in as many calories as possible. I try not to eat too much processed stuff, try to eat semi close to the source. But really when it comes down to it, if I need the calories, I'll go to McDonald's.
Yeah.
Like if I need it, I need it. It's more important to have the calories on board than it is to have the right calories on board.
Yeah.
So I always go for more as opposed to less, because I think that's one of the ways of staying healthy as well. And that's kind of something that I've always done is eat a lot.
Yeah.
And usually I eat past full. Tabor always puts my plate on there and I'm like, okay, this is my mission tonight. I enjoy half of it. And I'm like, all right, I'm full, but I'm finishing that plate, dang it.
You got to power through. You got to power through for the mission.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then kind of training nutrition. I've kind of followed along with the classic theme of high carb fueling, trying to figure that out. It's kind of tough with running though, because there's so much jostling. There's a lot of other stuff that comes into it. Like fueling on the bike is pretty easy, right? Like
sure.
You can just be tossing back gels after gels. There's no shaking there. So like as long as your body can take it, you can take it. So I've kind of been playing with it of just like kind of inching up more and more and more calories. I kind of found my happy spot is right around like 90 grams of carb an hour. Pretty much I can always do that. I've tried going more and I've had some awful experiences. I've had the problem is that some days it works and other days it doesn't.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those like repeatable things of I know 90 is repeatable, and that's still a lot of carbs coming in.
Sure.
If you can absorb all that, you're golden for an ultra distance event. Like if you're going harder than that, you probably have other issues. Like I think it's a little bit of what the output is. You need to be knowing that and like how many carbs and stuff you're burning, but your body can only absorb so much. So like, I don't know. I'm playing a lot with that. That's a big thing right now. And right now, happy spot, 90 grams of carb an hour.
Yeah, interesting. I know that you've been around a long time, and if you're a coach, you're paying attention to the science. One thing that was pretty hot, probably 3 to 5 years ago, was going low carb. And it's interesting how these things, they become cyclical, right? Like it's going to be low carb, now it's high carb, it's going to be low carb again in 3 years' time, and it's probably going to cycle back to even higher carbs at some point. Did you ever pay attention to that or experiment with trying to, because trail running is interesting because you're out there for, like you said, 7-8 hours. If you're doing 100 miles, it's
a lot more.
Yeah, double that.
Depending on the course, it can be very long.
Yeah, so like the intensity level, even for you running a 730 mile, like it's a very low intensity zone. So in theory, you should be burning a majority fat as a fuel source. Did you go down that rabbit hole at all?
I tried. So we tried the whole kind of low carb dinner into kind of just a little bit of protein in the morning before an easy run. And then after that, I would just feel so awful. And so it was a thing that was not repeatable for me. And so one of the biggest things with training in general, like not just with fueling, is it has to be repeatable. Like you're never going to if you do one workout, you're not going to be that great. If you do one A+ workout, not going to be that great. But if you do a buttload of C+ workouts, you can actually be really fit.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. I guess can you talk through a little bit of the actual content? So if you're hitting 90 grams an hour, like what are you doing in terms of carrying that? I guess, if you need that much, that's 12 gels over the course of a 4-hour run. Right.
Yeah, no, that's really tough. So kind of currently the best thing that I've found is I use Precision Flow Gel. And so if I carry a big flow gel, I'll down an entire flow gel on a run.
Nice.
And that's 300 grams of carb right there.
Will you carry it in the actual big gel packet?
No, so
Okay.
I'll put it in a soft flask.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so it's 500 mils worth of this gel.
Yeah.
So it is. We use a lot of soft flasks in trail running. That's like all we use. We love the soft flask. So I'll have a belt that I can put a few soft flasks in. Cool. Americans really love the belt and the handheld bottles.
Okay.
And then Europeans love a vest.
Yes.
Yes.
What do you think the cultural difference is between the belt people and the vest people?
Americans like to run fast, and Europeans like mountains.
Yes.
So it's a different culture of it's a pain in the butt to run fast with a vest on.
Yeah.
But running with a belt on, you could do it. Sure. And so a lot of American races, you have more aid stations, more access to stop and fill up. So you'll go really lightweight, really minimal, kind of like the hero of American running was Anton Kripke for a long time. He's a Boulder guy.
Yeah.
And he would just run with a handheld and that's it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But it's really funny, going over to Europe, it's such a different thing and you have to learn how to run with a pack. But so much of that terrain is so steep that you end up hiking a lot of it anyway. Power hiking is what they say.
Yeah. I am really curious. I have a whole section here, just discussing, and I want to hear your opinions on the racing and the training in Europe versus the racing and training here in the States. A, how much of your schedule is European focused? And B, do you feel like the mountains of Colorado can prepare you for the demands of competition in Europe? Yeah.
So kind of right now, for somebody who's not racing 100 miles, the biggest race in the world is in Europe. And that would be UTMB week. So the 50, it's a 55K, 100K, and a 100 mile are the biggest races there. So kind of everyone combines, they go to those. They're starting back up like world championships every other year. So this year there's one of those in Spain, but that's like, I don't know. I don't know if it's even bigger than UTMB week. Like there's such like this cult following of UTMB week. So it's one of those things like I kind of have to go unless I want to race Western States, which is like the American version of that. And again, Fast and Furious, it's very completely different race. But it is like our UTMB week. It's our special race. And so unless you're doing that, kind of, if you want to be racing the best people in the world, you got to go to either that or the World Championships, which are both in Europe.
Okay.
Yeah. But with that being said, I absolutely think you can train in the US for those. I think it was really helpful knowing what the terrain at each of those races are. But I think a lot of people feel the need to go over there a certain amount of time. But I think for me, it's easier being here, being at home, being close to my family, again, homebody.
Sure.
So it's one of those things like, I know, okay, if I'm going to race in Chamonix, it's runnable and steep. We have plenty of runnable and steep stuff here. Like if you look out at the mountains, they're steep, they're big. The tough thing is the altitude. If you want to do a 3,000 foot climb, you end up at 11, 12,000 feet pretty easily, there's a little bit of give and take there, but I do absolutely think you can train here.
Can you do runs in the Rocky Mountain National Park that will get you up to 10,000
easy
feet plus?
Yeah. I mean, Rocky Mountain starts at what, like 9?
Yeah, totally. And
so
you get
like
up to 12 or whatever.
Yeah,
13.
yeah. I think you can get up to 13 in Rocky Mountain pretty easily.
Yeah.
And then if you want to go over to like Leadville, you get up to 14 super easy.
Sure.
And you just have to find the right places to do it. Even in Boulder, you have a couple 1,000 foot climbs. And I'm not convinced that a couple 1,000 foot climb's not a mountain. Sure. I was told by Jim Walmsley, which is like the best ultra runner that US has ever made. He's one of the best in the world. He told me that I don't have any mountains around me because they're not a 3,000 foot sustained climb.
Wow. Yeah, I guess like Jim sort of inspired some of the lines of questioning here, right? Because he trained in the States for a long time and he decided that he needed to move to France in order to be European.
Yeah. No, I honestly think that was more of a mental thing for him. Mm-hmm. Like I think he needed to be all in for that event. He kind of has that, it takes him a little while to get a race right, but once he gets the race right, he's unstoppable.
Sure.
And I think he just needed to be there. I think he was too far away from understanding the intricacies of it, that he was just like, okay, like I'm just going all in, like doing this. And I think that was more of a mental thing than an actual physical thing. I don't think the physical changed that much for him.
Sure. Can we rewind a little bit? I think some of the listeners might be hearing you speak about some of these events and the different distances. And even myself, I'm curious to understand, like, can you just break us down sort of what the professional trail running scene is like in terms of distance? So you see stuff like Western States, you see UTMB, those are 100-mile events, right? Mm-hmm. And then you've got yourself, which is, you're winning 50K events. So what are the options for a professional trail runner and where are you at?
Yeah, so the options are endless. Trail running is such a wide, it's a very ambiguous term, trail running, because you do have, there's tons of races that are called these sub-ultra, which is kind of a funny thing. It's just like a shorter race, but you can go up until that like marathon distance. And okay. They're fast and furious, crazy, wild. There's like the Golden Trail Series that is kind of the hubbub of that. In the US, we have Cirque Series races that are just kind of like at ski resorts, and you run up a ski resort and you run right back down it, which is super fun, crazy, but they're only like an hour to 3 hours long. Like that's a sub-ultra race. And then you get to like the 50K distance, which some people still consider sub-ultra like that. I don't know why, but it's like, there's like sub-ultra media that are like, yeah, well, 50K is close enough to sub-ultra.
Sure.
I don't know where that comes from. Like 50K is a long ways.
Yeah.
That's a lot of running.
It's crazy. Yeah.
And then you kind of have the 100K and 100-mile distance, which currently right now I'd say like most eyes are on like that 100-mile distance, being like UTMB and Western States. Like those are kind of like the biggest hoopla around everything, is like everyone cares about those races. I don't know what exactly the reasoning for that is. Like I think everybody's for some reason just thinking longer is better.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, they're I think those are kind of like the biggest races of like importance, quote unquote importance, for the trail running scene. But I currently those other races are actually getting much more popular, and people are realizing like, wow, it's crazy how fast those races are. Like the 55K that I did in Chamonix, like we were running the whole time. Like it wasn't UTMB. Like I like to talk trash a little bit. It's like half walking, like power hiking.
Sure. Yeah.
No, there's a lot of time that's spent hiking. So like it's cool seeing these short races that are like fast and furious and crazy, like people exploding left and right, like sometimes me being that person. But it is exciting. It's wild. So I think people are finally coming to grips with that each individual race has its own flavor. But past that, there's 200-mile races now. There's anything you can want in trail running.
And where do you fall? So like for those that don't know, Eli won a huge race. It's a 50K called OCC this August. Yep. Was that like a breakthrough race for you?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. So that's part of that UTMB week.
Sure.
So that was like the most competitive 55K or 50K distance in the world that year. This last year.
Yeah, sure.
It's new year. It's kind of still that year.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll just keep looping in 2024. So you've mostly been focusing, you haven't gone beyond 50K, is that correct?
No, so I did a 50 miler, but this is kind of a weird thing, but I consider the 50 miler about the same as the 50K. Like that, purely that 50 miler, because it's so fast that the time that I ran in that was about the same time as I ran in OCC, which is funny because like I kind of do things off of hours instead of miles. Like I'm going to get ready for a 7.5 hour race is way more manageable than, oh yeah, I'm going to go run 60 some miles.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. That makes complete sense. And I guess like, is there a competition between the guys that are focusing mostly on the 100-mile and the 50K? Like, are those two totally different things? Like, is it short course versus long course in triathlon, where there's a complete divide, and like short course is when people step up, that's a big transition for them? Or is it sort of like everyone dabbles in everything? It
was more divided. Like it was kind of short course, long course triathlon type of thing until recently. Well, I should say all of the ultra distances are kind of interchangeable. They're much different, but and then the sub ultra stuff has been very different until kind of this last couple of years, where now those guys are kind of playing up in the longer stuff. A lot of the top guys in the big ultra scene are still throwing down unbelievable times in the sub ultra races. So it depends on the athlete, but it's a little bit more interchangeable now.
Sure. Do you foresee yourself focusing more in the future on the 50K stuff? Do you want to progress up? Do you want to play around?
You know, kind of this whole trail scene, like the whole trail life that I've started is just kind of been exploration of trying to figure out what my favorite thing is. Currently it's been up to like, I've been having more fun going longer. So I'm going to try going longer and trying racing longer and see what I think about it. I don't have any really idea going forward past like this next year. Like, yeah, I want to do longer races and I want to do some 100 milers, but I think I always want to do some shorter races. I love the 50K distance. Like it's so much fun, and it's amazing how fast you can run for 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah, very interesting. And I guess like one question that I have off the heels of that is, from a professional standpoint, do the brands care as much about the 50K and shorter as they do the 100-mile? I mean, are athletes who are focusing, like Jim Walmsley, obviously he's successful at the 100-mile, do they value him more than someone doing a 50K or below?
It really depends on the brand. There are some brands that really care about sub ultra racing. So like that whole Golden Trail series, that sub ultra racing, that is sponsored by Salomon, and so Salomon loves sub ultra racing. Like that is their jam. They love that. So they put money into that. They sponsor all these sub ultra athletes, and then other companies just don't really care about sub ultra stuff. They're like, all right, all we care about is the 100-mile distance. So like Hoka, they care about the 100-mile distance.
Sure.
They are like, all right, we want Jim Walmsley, we want Rod Farber, like these same guys that race about the same race, like are fighting with each other for that like top spot on the podium, but they want all of those guys.
Yeah. And I guess one question I have here is, how sustainable do you think it is for athletes like Jim or yourself as you step up to do multiple 100Ks and multiple 100 miles while maintaining the speed, while not getting hurt, while traveling the world? Like, is this a recipe for disaster, or is it more manageable than maybe I perceive?
I think there's people that play with that line a little bit too close. I think some people hop over that line aggressively. I think there is a surprising amount that your body can adapt to, especially if you're fueling properly, you're recovering properly, if you're doing all of the things, doing all the extra things. I think you can get away with a lot. I'm not sure if I have a great answer for if it's good for you, because I doubt it is. But, I do think it's one of those things, like each individual person has to take care of themselves. And like, if they can do another 100-miler this year, great. Some people do like, one of my friends, Ruth Croft, was like, I'll do 100-miler a year. I think otherwise I think it's bad for my body. So like, okay, yeah, like don't do more than one a year then.
Yeah. The uninformed observer might be looking at professional sport and be like, oh, that's really healthy. But professional Ironman triathlon and professional trail running is not good for your body.
No, it's really not.
Yeah, it's really unhealthy. So yeah, I think that's just what we all sort of accept. From my perspective as a very outside viewer of trail running, like I'm a big fan of running. I pay attention really closely to track and field and the Diamond League. I'm a little bit further removed from trail running, although now I'm getting a little bit more into it because I find it super interesting, and seeing you do what you've done has been really cool. I'm seeing it follow a trend, and please correct me if I'm wrong, similar to professional gravel racing, similar to what triathlon has seen, where it was maybe sort of niche. Now it's getting a lot more media exposure. Are you seeing that as well, where it's sort of blowing up?
Yeah. So I think it's following triathlon in a lot of senses. I mean, UTMB is owned by Ironman.
Sure.
So like, but I do think it's kind of going through this like huge popularity thing right now where everybody's like kind of going, I think there was that huge rush towards Ironman, like for the average person, like 15 years ago of like, I want to do an Ironman. That's the biggest thing that I could do. And like, now it's like all these professionals are racing it and that's cool, but like less people are like, that's the cool thing to do. Right now it's, I want to see if I can run 50 miles or I want to see if I can run 100 miles. So I think right now we're kind of going through that like popularity spike. So I'm not really sure where that's going to lead us. There is definitely more of a professionalism that's coming into trail running that, like, talking with people that have been in the sport for a long time, they're just shocked of like, wow, like this sport's evolved so much. But really, I've only come in it 3 years ago. So it's like kind of not really changed that much from when I've been in here, but talking to people that have been in longer, they are flabbergasted at what's going on.
Yeah, it might be their perspective that, is their perspective that it's good for the sport, or do they miss it?
So mixed. It's
Really?
so mixed. Yeah, there's some people that are so against it, like get like all professionalism out of trail running. Like we just want to go run in the mountains with our shirts off and do whatever, like barefoot. And then there's the other people that are like, oh yeah, we're bringing in super shoes. We want to see how fast we can run this course.
Sure. Do you feel like you're one of those people who's coming in and trying to change the game a little bit?
A little bit, yeah. Like I see the whole, I see the point of it, and I see like, oh yeah, this is an amazing thing. The culture is amazing. And I think it's something that's like, we're responsible for keeping that amazing culture that is trail running. But I do think striving for excellence is something that really drives me. And so like, I think there's a lot of people that should continue with that, and finding that balance of not being a terrible person, but also like doing your best in sport.
Yeah. Do you think there's like maybe this protective cloak around the 100-mile distance, for example, because it is so extreme? Like it's so much more extreme and like out there than an Ironman. It's so much more extreme than a marathon. Do you think it will always have something special there because only a select handful of people can even complete it?
Right. I don't know. It's kind of one of those things. Like I think more people are figuring out they can do it. I think even just 10, 15 years ago, it was kind of that, oh, that's just for those weird people that run in the mountains all the time. That's for those people.
Yeah.
I think now people are like finding like that can be their next objective. That can be their big goal of something like I do kind of go by the, you should do really hard things in your life. And I think a lot of people are finding like, yeah, this is super hard for me just to finish. And like that is one of my life goals now. Whether that stays that way, I don't know.
Sure.
But I'm enjoying the spike while it happens.
Yeah. And, you're in this world now, seemingly 100%. Who, from your perspective, is kind of changing that game and pushing the needle in terms of performance? Like, who's out there really trying to go as fast as possible?
Oh, there is an entire echelon of people up there that are saying like, all right, like it's been really fun doing like the slow stuff, but let's push the barrier. Let's train more. Let's train better. I don't know if there's one person that I can put up there, but there is just so many people that are really up there trying to perfect the training that comes with trail running, because we don't know. Like it's easy to say like, okay, how do you get fit on a bike? Like a watt's a watt. You got to push a certain amount to, if your drag is this, you got to push a certain amount to get off the bike at this point. Like that's pretty easy to know. But who knows what you need to be able to run up a 20% incline on after 6 hours of running.
Yeah, it's totally different. There's so many more elements that go into it. Yeah, it's crazy. What is the sponsorship situation like in professional trail running now? Is it many contracts for many people, or do you feel like there's only a select handful of people out there who are making a living off of professional trail running?
I think there's a lot more contracts than there are people making a living. There's a lot of contracts right now that are kind of that you get shoes and $5,000. And I think there's a lot of people that are like, just want to be labeled as a professional, which is tough. Like, I think there's a lot of athletes that deserve a lot more, but it's again, going back to like the coming into professionalism in the sport. Right now, I think brands are a little bit taking advantage of that and not paying like athletes necessarily what they're worth. I think as long as this trend keeps going and trail running keeps growing as much as it is, I think that'll change within the next few years. And I think there's a lot of athletes that are finally starting to get what they're worth. Like there's athletes that are making 6 digits now just off of a single contract. And like, wow, that's actually what they're like putting out there, and they're giving that brand that return on investment that it's worth them doing that. Yeah. So it's kind of that give and take, right? Like it's finding the right athletes, but at the same time, like companies can't take advantage of athletes.
Yeah. I mean, is there any onus on the athletes, and maybe you lump yourself into this category of, hey, we have to vouch for what our industry standard is here? Because I've had this conversation with Alexi Vermeulen, who's a professional gravel cyclist. And I was just, we were discussing the fact that if one athlete takes 5K from a company and one athlete takes 0, and they both sort of do the same thing in terms of social media and performance, everyone's value comes down, and those are just arbitrary numbers. But are you seeing that in your scene right now?
Yeah, there's definitely that right now. Because again, like it's nice to call yourself a professional athlete. And I think there's this level of respect that comes with it. I don't know if respect's the right word, but it's that where you can you can take it really seriously, and people aren't saying, hey, when are you going to get a job? It's like, I'm a professional.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, good. Yeah, that's great. Sure. And like, I think that's like the first step of getting it to there. I do wonder like if it was more open, say like, how much like basketball players are making, how much football players are making. So I don't know if this is the answer, but I wonder if there was like kind of that open source of like, this is how much Jim's making, this is how much Killian's making. Like It would be super interesting to know, just so that people had this, okay, well, I'm not giving a brand what Jim wants or what Jim can give them, so I don't deserve nearly that much. And but I'm giving a lot more than this person.
Sure. Yeah. There's like a ranking system.
Yeah, no, but like it's something that like even just like you can figure out roughly what you're worth. And I think with it being such a new sport, there's just big questions of, I don't know what I'm supposed to ask for, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I've been going through this. Like I changed sponsors to Adidas this last year, and I was like, I don't know, like I want some money. Like I want to be able to make a living so I can
Sure.
coach a little bit less and spend a little bit more time running. But it's kind of one of those big questions. I'm not sure what the answer is. I don't think I'm the guy for that, but
Sure.
I do love to throw ideas out there, and like it'd be fun to know how much everybody's making at least.
I feel like I'm poking at Adidas now only because I had Drew Hunter on the show and like I asked him a lot of, industry brand questions because I'm really curious about this topic, and, you're sponsored by Adidas as well. One thing I'm curious to hear your opinion on is if Adidas values you as a trail runner the same way that they value some of their guys on the track or some of their guys on the road.
Yeah. I know that like, so I would say like they value us, but it's not something that, looking at it from a business side, currently we're not making nearly as much money for Adidas as track and road running is. Yeah. So why would they give us as much money? Like I do think there's more of a discrepancy than probably should be with that, and that's not with just Adidas. Like that's with most companies. You see these big contracts coming out, and you're like, for like road athletes, you're like, wow, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
But like it is one of those things. Like we are still a niche sport, so it is. I think it currently is like, yeah, like we make less money for Adidas than like a Drew Hunter would.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's like a pure what's the income versus what's the
Right,
spend
yeah.
type thing. And yeah, I think running shoes are really hard because it's difficult to draw like the direct correlation between, influence and sales.
Exactly.
Type of thing.
Yeah.
What is the impact of the carbon shoe? You mentioned that now in trail running, like that's coming over. Are trail races getting exponentially faster? Are world records getting broken or course records getting broken because of the shoes? Or like, what's your opinion there?
So super shoes and trail running is such a difficult thing. Like for companies to get a shoe right is such a difficult thing. I don't think you can have, like, if you just throw on the bottom of some, like, say Adidas Pro 3s, just throw some lugs on there, you are going to break your ankle.
Yeah.
They're too stiff. They're not stable enough. So actually finding the right combination of stiffness, where you're actually getting some return back, using some of that Piba foam that is absolutely amazing. It's hard finding that combination right now. We're like, I'm very lucky right now because Adidas absolutely has the best trail running shoe.
Really?
Yeah, their super shoes the best. Like I'm very happy with where I am right now.
Cool. And is that like, does everyone else agree? Like, are people looking at Adidas and being like, oh, well, that's like way better than a Hoka or way better than a Nike or whatever?
I think there's very few people that are like saying Adidas is out of the question. Like there's obviously people like, okay, yeah, well, I like this feel better than I like this one.
Sure.
And it's hard to actually like say, okay, if you're running on this trail, how can you prove that it's this much better until you've actually run in them?
Yeah.
So like a lot of people are just like, I'm just not going to run in them because I don't want to know.
Yeah, sure.
Like if you have a contract with Hoka or with Nike, you're like, I'm not going to run in them. I want to know that I'm wearing the fastest shoe I can wear.
Yeah.
But it is one of those things, like it's very dependent on the terrain. And going back to all the different styles and distances of trail running, you also have such different styles and distances of terrain. Like the things that change up, like say, like if you go to California and you're racing in California, there's many times that you will be sub 6, like in a 100-miler. Wow. Like those trails are smooth as butter and super easy. You go run up in the Rockies, yeah, you're probably going to be doing a lot of hiking and they're not going to help you that much.
Sure. So
if you're finding those like fast shoes, they definitely help you more in, say, like a Western states than they would in UTMB. I don't know necessarily. They help a lot with like foot fatigue and leg fatigue and stuff. So it might still like do a pretty big impact on those more like hiking races than like the fast like Western style races. So I don't know exactly. I think we're too early to tell. But I think it is one of the big things that is changing.
Yeah. Just to tie it back to the business component, how much is a company like Adidas pushing that carbon trail shoe? It feels like a specific audience.
Yeah. So they did a really great thing. They pushed it during UTMB week, which like they kind of caught everyone off guard. And before, like, because UTMB is sponsored by Hoka, and like they didn't have rules set before that.
Nice.
And they like threw that out there, and like so they got super big with that. And they were like teasing it for years of like, we're trying to figure out this perfect shoe. We're figuring it out. Like we put a shoe on an athlete and they tell us this is wrong. So we change that thing and give it back to them. So like it was something that was in development for such a long time. And even like we found, carbon's not necessarily the way. One of the best things is kind of plastic. Like it's stiffer, and it has a stiffening element in it, but it's not carbon, because carbon's like almost too stiff, and you'll break your ankle.
Sure. Yeah. 100%. What, let's see here. You're still new to this. You said you've only been doing this 3 or 4 years. Like, where do you see this season taking you? You mentioned the 100K coming up in February. What's beyond that?
Yeah. So beyond that, so I am signed up for the 100K distance at UTMB week. And then kind of that my season's going to be built probably around racing that. The thing that throws a big wrench in it, this race that I'm going to is a golden ticket race, which means that if I'm in the top 3, they're giving me an option to race Western States, which is a 100-miler, which is I'm not sure if I'm ready for. And like, honestly, the whole Western thing doesn't really get me going. I like, the only thing that does it for me there is the competition, and the competition looks like it's going to be just absolutely next level this year. And like, it's not my motivation to go to this 100K. Like, I just wanted to get 100K in before I go race that CCC. But the option's there if like I really like it, if I do well, obviously if I'm in that podium position.
Yeah.
So like I have to do very well to be there, to even have that option. But that would be the only thing that would throw a wrench in it. And yeah, I don't know, man. Like we're kind of playing it by ear. Currently the idea is focus on CCC.
Yeah. Very interesting. And then do you think that it's going to be an easy decision to take that Western States slot if you get that golden ticket?
No, I don't think it is.
Do you foresee a world in which you decline?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm absolutely 50-50 right now. And I'm trying to kind of push that thought off until after the race, because I think the race is going to tell me quite a bit about what I like and what I don't like about the distance. Obviously, if I have a terrible race, like it's not even an option for me. Yeah. But if I have a great race and I don't really want to run like another 7 hours. It's like, okay, easy decision. I don't want to do it.
I think in that moment, it's going to be hard to say you want to run another 7 hours. I guess long-term, maybe looking at the next 3 years, is focusing on the 100-mile maybe more your goal or the thing, or are you going to continue sort of down this path of just playing around?
Yeah, I'm still just following what I'm enjoying. I'm not going to go say like, okay, I need to go race Western States or UTMB because I think they're some of the biggest races. It's what's kind of driving my heart at the time.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, before we wrap the podcast here, this has all been super insightful. I finished the podcast here with a rapid fire. I've got 6 questions for you today. You ready for it?
Okay.
All right. Number 1, who was your biggest inspiration or motivation while you were doing triathlon, and who is it now that you've shifted to running?
Oh, I always thought Javier Gomez was sick. Like I thought that guy was a legend.
Yeah, totally.
And then in trail running, like I have a man crush on this guy named Manuel Marias. Like absolute man crush. I don't speak the same language. He speaks Spanish. I don't speak any Spanish. And like we've tried to converse like with my limited Spanish. Doesn't happen at all, but this guy is an absolute monster running downhill. He runs with these bamboo poles all the time. And it's like absolute legend. I was like, I want to be that man.
Yeah, totally. This isn't rapid fire now, but I have a follow-up question off of that. Like how inclusive is the professional scene? Is everyone like pretty chill and nice? Or is it very combative and competitive?
99% of people are like some of the nicest people I've ever met.
Oh, that's really cool. That's cool to hear. What's your most epic I'm lost but don't want to admit it moment?
I would say more so I've done that on training runs of just like I get out in the wilderness and like, wow, this is not the trail I thought it was. And like you're like 10 miles out, you're like, okay, like pull out the phone and like, nope, that's GPS does not work when you don't have any phone service. So
Can you like download the route on your Garmin or something?
Yeah, I've gotten better at that now.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I feel like that makes sense.
More than one of those experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the most challenging place to run in the world?
I don't know. I think as long as you're prepared for it, it shouldn't be that challenging.
You sit down in the chair, walk me through the aid station routine. Like in a race.
Oh, I don't sit in chairs in aid stations.
Really? Oh, it's that. It's like that. Okay, hang on. Even for the 100K, you wouldn't?
No, I'm definitely not.
What about 100 mile?
100 mile. If I'm feeling bad, I might stop for a second. But currently, I think right now the goal is to run through every aid station I get to.
Okay.
Just like pick up some new bottles, maybe toss some ice in a backpack or something. I don't know.
Do you need to change shoes? I feel like I see people changing shoes at the aid station.
I don't have too many issues with my feet with the Adidas shoe. So ideally, I don't. I think that's in case of emergency.
Yeah, for sure. How does one handle falling on the trail? Is there like a graceful way to do it? Or are you just like running one moment and down the next?
Yeah, don't ask me. I am the least graceful faller there is. But,
yeah.
And the way I came into this sport is I just started following all the fast people I knew. So I was in over my head. So I fell constantly.
Yeah. Have you had any injuries? Like just like fall and break your wrist or something?
I haven't had any broken bones, knock on wood, but I've had a lot of bruises and scrapes.
Yeah. Well, touch wood.
I just sprained my wrist like last week.
Yeah. I feel like it's part of the territory with trail running. Like, yeah, I run trails like once every 2 years and always fall like on that one run. So, all right. If you had to pivot again and choose a career in another adjacent endurance sport, what would it be?
Ooh. I don't know. I think I could do gravel cycling. I kind of go back and forth on that because I love gravel riding, and I'm a good rider, but like I feel like that's meant for easy riding. Like that's meant for fun riding. So I don't know if I'd want to race it, but I think if I had to change, I'd probably go to gravel riding.
Sounds like a good answer. All right. Well, that's all I've got for you today. Appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man.
See you in the next episode. Peace.